Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Invoke the Magic of Your Inner Oracle with the Magdalene Rose. Discover the sacred womb within as a portal for accessing your inner spiritual knowledge. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I feel blessed to be with you here, getting to explore a really central figure in the turning of the era to a new pattern of civilization, which begins in each of our hearts. It's really about a reclamation underway, and there's a reason why Mary Magdalene is popping up all over the world and in so many different ways. It's because there's some important medicine that she holds for how we make this shift into a new era. And so we're going to get to explore this with one of the true global pioneers of this work. Her name is Elayne Kalila Doughty. She's an ordained priestess, psychotherapist, and trauma specialist. And she's really been bringing forward and synthesizing a new body of teachings around the Magdalene that I think is so powerful for activating our higher capacities and really being the greatest blessing we can in the world. So Elayne, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure to be back here again, offering yet another heartfelt piece of the Magdalene into our collective. I just feel so honored to get to be here with you, Stephen, and to bring forward, as you said, the Magdalene into the collective psyche in this way. So thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Well, I can feel it's interesting. Once you step into the field of the Magdalene, you can see this outworking in the collective, almost archetypally right now, that it's really very present. It's not just in the, Christian lineages or West. It's like there's an upsurge of interest that is connected to a real spiritual awakening that's in a divine feminine flavor. So we're going to dive into this. I also want to let people know right up front, we are going to have a brand new program with Elayne called the Magdalene Rose that we'll share more about in the second part of the hour if you want to go further into this blessed work. So Elayne, let's begin with your journey into the Magdalene. And your journey into your own oracular priestess side as well.
Goodness. Well, I always start with this story because it is seminal. I was raised within the Christian church, and I was a great lover of Jesus as a child. And I grew up inside of two churches, the evangelical church as well as the Protestant church in England. When I reached 13 years of age, I went to be confirmed in the church. And I remember that day. It's one of those indelible points. We have those in our lives where we remember. And I was in the church dressed in white with a little crucifix on, and I was awaiting the bishop to arrive. And he arrived and with his big pointy hat on, and he comes up to me, I'm in line, and he comes up to me and he's about to confer the Holy Spirit upon me. The Holy Spirit is code word for the divine Sophia, by the way. And so he comes and he has the holy oil, and he goes to place the holy oil upon my third eye, my pineal gland, my center of oracular sight. And in that moment, I look into his eyes, and my 13-year-old self said, he's not really there. There's no one there. He's conferring nothing upon me. He is just going through the rote. He's going through this mechanical action, but the spirit that he's meant to confer on me is not here. And it was like a flash of inspiration in my inner psyche as a 13-year-old girl. And what I heard in the background was, wait a minute, where are all the women? And in that moment, I walked out of the church and I never returned. I walked out and I decided to not get confirmed. And I left the church. I left the Sunday school. I left all of it because there was something inside of me that felt so hoodwinked and betrayed, because there was something missing. And there was not only something missing, there was a whole half of humanity missing from this storyline. And that set me upon a trail of many, many, many years of traveling all over the world, seeking for the divine feminine. I went to India, I went to Nepal, I went to Indonesia, to Malaysia, to Bali, down into South America, looking for where is the evidence of the divine feminine. And along the way, I was very, very lucky to meet some incredible teachers. R.L. Spilsbury is one of them. Diana Dubrow is another one of them, who are holding these lineages of the divine feminine and who she is. And through all of this kind of searching and seeking, I stumbled back upon Mary Magdalene, the missing character. One could say the central character, along with Jesus, of the Christian mysteries. So that's the short version of the story of how I sort of started to come back into connection with her. And there's been many, many, many instances over the last 15 years, especially, of connection with her, visitations with her, downloads that have come through, and really a choice that I made in connection to her particularly, which was to make the vow to walk as love. And a lot of the work that I've been doing in the world, especially with the Shift Network over the last few years, has been exploring what this means to walk the way of love as a priestess, as a woman in this time in my life, this time in the world. What are we really meaning when we say we're here to bring love back to the planet?
Mm. Well, a dramatic embarkation point on your journey with the bishop there. And I think there's something true, not just with him, but it's like the lineages we've inherited. There's a life force that's been sucked out of them, out of this balance with the patriarchal pattern and the suppression of the feminine. It sucks the life out of so many of these living lineages in many ways. And so this reclamation is really so vital. So maybe from your standpoint of today, why don't you just share, who is Mary Magdalene to you now, personally, archetypally? Like, what is her function for you as a guide and activator?
Oh, she's such a powerful force. I think you named it, Stephen, in your introduction when you said she appears to be kind of everywhere at this time, right? Rising up within so many of us. And I think there's a really important distinction, and you just spoke into it, to make between the historical figure of Mary Magdalene, who we have some knowledge of from the scriptures that still exist in the New Testament and in the Gospel of Mary and the Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Thomas, right? The apocryphal Gospels. There's this woman who was defamed and, basically reviled and made into the fallen woman of Christianity, which is basically what happened to her around 500 AD. That's kind of like the story that cast about her. And she kind of held this poster child for the fall of the divine feminine and the really kind of like the sinful idea of femininity, the idea that the body is evil, the body is bad, the pathway to connect to the divine can only be reached through a male priest. That whole kind of body of knowledge that we have from who Magdalene was and what she stood for is really, really important, but that's only one part of the story. The other part of the story is what I would call Magdalene, and I don't say Mary Magdalene, I say Magdalene, the archetypal avatar. And by archetypal avatar, what I really mean is that there is a sense of the Magdalene consciousness that is arising within us now as a living archetype. So archetypes are not dead, they're not static, they are living psychic organs, Jung used to call them, psychic organs of the collective knowing that are rising up to serve the evolution of the collective at a particular moment in time. Now, I believe that we're living at a particular moment in time, and Stephen, you reference this, that we're in a great kind of turning, if we will, the end of one civilization and the birthing of a new civilization, the movement from the Piscean era into the Aquarian era. We're seeing it in our world, the demise, the fall of the patriarchy and this extreme kind of toxic masculinity that we've been living in. And my sense is that the Magdalene as an archetype has been hanging out in the underworld, might we say, for the last 2000 or so years, right, from the historical Magdalene till now, and that there is this seed that got planted 2000 years ago, and that seed is beginning to flower into our consciousness, you could say in through our intuition, through the symbolic realm, to actually arise as this collective awakening, not through one avatar, but through a collective avatar, which is actually all of us. All of the women and men who are awakening to the divine feminine and saying there's an imbalance, there's a way in which we need to address the inequities in our culture and our societies. And we've been seeing it over the last few years, particularly with the rise of the Me Too movement, then into Black Lives Matter and the whole horrific debacle and murder of George Floyd, through to COVID, through to where we are now in the bigger outpicturing of our world, that there is a level of tumult happening, like we are being raked over at the end point of this civilization and the birth of something new. And when that happens, it is my belief, or I should say even my gnosis, my knowing internally, that new archetypes are born into our consciousness to begin to guide us. And the Magdalene is one such archetype. So what I want to talk to you about, just to clarify that a little bit more, which is something that super excites me, because when I found this out, when I figured this out through my own studies, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. So we think of Mary Magdalene, we think of a person, but what we don't realize is that both the word Mary and Magdalene are titles. Mary could be translated as priestess, and Magdalene can be translated as the tower or strength, or the watchtower woman, or the lighthouse, or the great cosmic doorway between the worlds. Or you could even find it in the root of the word magic, magi, magician, she who has access to the in-between realms, the realms of the unseen and the realms of the seen, she who is a conduit between the worlds, a portal. And that is actually what Magdalene consciousness is birthing in us, is that we are not just of this third dimensional physical body, and we are not just spirit. We are a marriage of both. And that is the thing that excites me most, is this marriage of our divinity and our humanity that raises us up from being humans who've forgotten where we come from, or being transcendent beings who are leaving this planet, to being awakened humans who are conscious and awake and choosing to move from a place of higher connection to their divinity whilst being in their humanity. And that is, for me, why the Magdalene is taking such strong hold right now, because we are together having to be initiated and learn what it means to be this new human, this new conscious human.
So powerfully shared there. And so I want to dive a little deeper into, you had mentioned sort of that she was in the underworld for some time, and this sort of incarnational aspect of it. It's like the embodiment of the divine. So we had this kind of whole arc where the Virgin Mary was sort of like on a pedestal, the more the ascendant. And so what is required for us to sort of reclaim this deeper, more integrated, embodied, feminine, and then stand in that relative to the society that we're in?
That's a fabulous question. I think we have been given a patterning of spirituality that is transcendent, right? That is about moving up and out into spirit. We're going to get to heaven one day. If we behave well enough according to Christian doctrine, we're going to go to heaven. If we don't, we're going to go to hell. Well, that doctrine misses a whole nother part of the story, which is in order for us to ascend, we first have to descend. And the journey of descending, or the journey of what I would call immanence, embodiment, is the divine feminine journey. The divine feminine holds the keys to that journey of getting down and into our bodies and actually awakening ourselves out of the slumber, you could say, or the unconsciousness of our humanity, the density of our humanity, to remember that we also have divine origins, that we are also spirit, but that we are here in human body having the human experience. And it's through our humanity that we actually remember our divinity. And I think that that's a very different storyline, because what Magdalene, from my perspective, has taught me through studying her, through being in deep contemplation with her and meditation, and really calling her forward in myself and asking, Magdalene, please show me the way of how I can be of service to you in this awakening. What I have remembered, and I want to use that word very deliberately, remembered means to bring back together that which has been rent asunder, right? So when we remember something, we're actually coming back into a deeper wholeness. Is that it's not that my humanity is bad, or that my shadow behaviors are bad, or that my, ways that I am greedy or selfish or thoughtless or unkind are bad. It is that I am being brought into a conscious awareness of the impact of my actions in the world of form. And I get to choose to love myself enough to say, is that really loving what I just did and said? And that self-reflection is part of what we are seeing budding and growing in our world, at the same time as there, of course, is a budding and growing of the intensity of the shadow. As more light comes in, there is more shadow for us to deal with. But I really, really feel that the amazing opportunity is for us to embrace our shadows, our places where we fall out of the way of love, and to bring ourselves back into the question of what is loving, and awaken our inner insight, to awaken our knowing, or our gnosis. And this word's really important, because gnosis means that you are connected into the divine shard of light, the genius, if you will, that's up here, that your gnosis is connected to that. It's your inner wisdom, your inner knowing, your inner intelligence. And I believe at this point in our evolutionary journey, we as humans need to remember that we have access to that divine knowing, that we can call upon our intuition, our wisdom, our insight, the symbolic realm, our connection to the divine. And you've got to remember, Stephen, that this is what was made heretical through the Christian doctrine. During the horrifying last few hundred years, especially during the witch hunts, for example, we were hunted literally and burned at the stake for having oracular sight, or for having a direct connection to the divine, because that was made heretical. And it was said that you could not connect to the divine unless you were going to church, a Christian church, and accessing it through the appointed priest who had been ordained by the Pope to be that person. And so imagine what that does to all of us as human beings. It puts us into literally the dark ages, where the light of our own intuition, inspiration, awareness, knowing becomes somehow not just evil, but is something that has to be shut down for fear of being targeted. And we're still reclaiming this aspect of the divine feminine, which is the more intuitive, the more magical, the more, however you want it, whatever you want to call that, that sixth sense, that psychic ability, we're still reclaiming that. And there are still many, many, many factions of the world that are scared of it, judge it, see it as being satanic or evil. And so we're still reclaiming the divine feminine from the clutches of what has been projected onto the intuitives, the magic people, the shamans, you know, all of the stuff that we're seeing rising up in our culture is happening because there is a remembrance and reclamation happening. I would say the Magdalene archetypally is at the center of that.
There's a lot of connections and threads you're drawing there. So it's almost like you can't open that gnosis channel until you fully incarnate or embody. As you incarnate or embody, then you actually can open the channel. So the impulse to sort of get you more in the ascension mode or dependent on a bishop or a priest becomes a kind of subjugation because it cuts you off from from that direct knowing, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly that. And that also becomes something that we have feared in ourselves, right? So not only have we been cut off from it, but then we've been taught to fear it, make it weird, make it evil, make it satanic, make it dark, make it occult. And of course, when anything is pushed out, it starts to misshape itself and be used in retribution for being exiled, right? And that's part of what has happened. So I see the reclamation of our gnosis, or that divine connection, as being paramount, because we need to be able to discern what is real and true for ourselves in the world that we're living in currently. Like, there is so much noise, there is so much bifurcation, there is so many twists and turns to the story, and so many, you know, points of view. And how do we navigate through that? Well, for me, we have to cultivate a practice of activating the inner oracle, or the inner knowing, the inner awareness, where we can actually trust what we're receiving on the inside of ourselves so we can navigate.
So let's dive a little deeper into that oracle function. So you've worked with a lot of different archetypes and gone through the different faces of Mary Magdalene, and we're really focusing today around the oracle. And it sounds like the oracle is like opening that channel of knowing directly to the divine, and embodying that is really the central project in many ways of this reclamation. Because as you do that, this creates the space for you to reclaim more parts of yourself, it sounds like.
Well, I think it's really powerful. You know, there's 6 faces of the Magdalene that we speak about, and I think each one of them holds a function in helping you open the channel of the oracle. That's how I could frame it to you, you know, because we have to have our root intact. We must be rooted into our bodies and into the earth before we attempt to open to higher wisdom. Otherwise, we are not actually able to marry that higher wisdom into our humanity. And that is the journey of immanence, right? We have to get all the way down into our root, into our womb, into our perineum, into that root chakra, and actually get into our bodies. And that's a huge deal for many of us, because we've been very disembodied. We've been taught to be disembodied. We've been taught to live from the upper 3 chakras, like live from the heart up here. And all these lower chakras have been kind of taught to be sinful. This is where all the sin and naughtiness and evil of humanity lives. But really, it's where all the aliveness and juiciness and wildness of our humanity lives too, right? And so this idea of coming down and in is really powerful, to be able to come up, to activate the connection to the divine. So the archetype that I work with in the Magdalene that does that is called the incantrix. It's the high priestess. And I love this word, incantrix. Even saying it is so, there's something so yummy about it. And if I unpack that word for you a little bit, we come from this idea of, so we have the oracles, and we have oracles are into the word divination. Okay, so then the word divination means to literally come from the Latin word divinare, which means to be inspired by spirit, to be filled with spirit. So what are we really doing when we're coming into our oracular nature is we are connecting into the divine. We're calling it forth into this body to fill us with the light of gnosis. Show me in the darkness of this humanity what is real and true. And then the incantrix is a beautiful word that is coming from the word incantation. And incantation is when we sing, speak. You know, in ancient times, we would say spells or charms or soothsaying or chanting into being. We sing something or we speak it into being. We soothsay it into being. And there's a power in the words that we speak or the sounds that we utter or the vibrations that come from within us that are part of creating the world that we're moving in. So the oracle, the incantrix, within every one of us is receiving higher vision, letting it come through her into a gnosis, and then speaking it into being in the world. Not like one of us does this. This is a divine birthright. We all have this capacity. We were just told that we didn't because they wanted to reserve this only for for those who were in power. Only they got to do this, not you minions, not you, servant people. You don't get to have this. This isn't for you. And I say that with every bit of humility and humor because I come from a long line of washerwomen. I come from a long line of
up with the washerwoman.
Yes, from the servant classes in England,
yes.
Like my grandmother and her mother before her, a long line of women who were indentured in service. And this has been a big part of my life, has been reclaiming my birthright to create my world the way I want to create it, but not just my world, to create a world that I want to live in with those that I love. And that's really what we're talking about when we awaken the oracle within us. It's not just so that you can go, oh, am I going to, win $1,000 on the lottery tomorrow? The oracle tell me. It's about how do you want to create your life from an inspired place, from an inspiritus place.
You just speak in pure poetry, and I think it would be beautiful at this moment to have a little demonstration. I know we're going to do a whole experiential later, but I wonder if you'd be willing to draw an oracular card and just sort of shift into that mode yourself so we can kind of feel as you shift gears in that way.
Oh, I would love to. I've got the Magdalene Rose Oracle deck right here. And they've got, if you can see that right on the cover, we've got the flower of life on the front and these beautiful gold edges, which make me very happy every time I pick them up. So I'm going to shuffle for us all who are here right now. And I'm going to do a collective oracle. In other words, this card is for all of us, everyone who's gathering right now for this offering. This is a card that's wanting to come for us. And so I'm going to shuffle and I'm just going to take a moment to tune in and clear myself. And my question for us all today is, Magdalene, just show us an ally for us in this moment, for all of us, something you want us to look through the lens of for a moment. Oracle cards are an opportunity for us to hone our vision, archetypally speaking, to look through a specific lens so we can see something that we couldn't see before. That's the beautiful part of oracling, right? It's like we're kind of moving the mind into a different state of being. And so you might come with me for a moment just to drop out of your thinking mind and just take a breath. And I'd like you to have presence for yourself. If you were to call forward an ally right now, some energy to really support you with something that you're leaning into. That's what we're calling forward. So let's see, who wants to come play? And then I always cast my hand over these cards and I get a feeling like almost like a tingling in my hands, right? That's the card. Okay, so I'm going to pull this card. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is very connected. Stephen, can you repeat the title of this particular call? What was the subtitle for it?
The title is Discover the Sacred Womb Within as a Portal for Accessing Your Inner Spiritual Knowledge.
Woohoo! Thank you, Mother. Okay, we are so on track. So I'm going to pull up the card and show it to you, and hopefully you can all see it. So if I can you see it if I hold it right there?
Red rose.
A red rose. Okay, so I'm going to give you a reading from the red rose about this womb of creation and this place where we have to connect into to access the truth of who we are. The red rose is of the suit from the creatrix or the red maven. She is the energy of our blood, our breath, our bones. She brings us down into the root of our humanity, and she says to us, you are a creator. And you create not from up there, but from the roots up. Everything grows from the roots up. No plant will ever grow on this planet unless it is deeply rooted into the earth, the element of earth. And so you must ask, where am I rooted in my life? What is it that is nourishing me? What is it that is asking me to compost and nourish and fertilize the soil? Where do my roots lie? Who is my lineage? Who are my ancestors? Who are those who can support me with what I am facing in my life at this moment in time? And we're really coming into connection with the red rose lineage of the Magdalenes, who are the womb shamankas, the ancient women throughout her story, who have connected in with the power of creation by looking at the cycle of the moon, by understanding the connection between the stars and the earth, and who have charted their own lives through measuring time with their menstrual cycles, through measuring time and energy through the creational cycle of when we come to ovulation and what is to be birthed, and then when we come to our menstruation and what is to be released into the earth. This is a connection back into the natural cycle of creation in your own life. And so the question that might be asked here is, what is it that you are here to seed and create in this next moment of your life? What is it that really wants to be birthed through you into your life? What are you yearning to create? And how do you avoid letting yourself know what that is? Where are you scared of creating it? Where have you already decided that it can't work or that you can't do it? What is limiting you? And the red rose is here to remind you that you carry the frequency of creation within you, and that everything on this planet that is of nature, that is of humankind, has been created through that connection with the divine source coming into form through you. Your womb, and I don't just mean your womb. In other words, if you're a gentleman who's living here with me right now and doesn't have a womb, or a woman that says, well, I don't have a womb, I want you to understand the womb is not the same thing as the uterus. The uterus is a physical organ. I'm talking about the womb as this creational space inside every single one of us, out of which our lives are born, out of which we are born, and out of which we continue to rebirth ourselves throughout our lives. This is a signal that there is something new to be born. And I would argue that we're standing in that collectively.
I can feel it. Very powerful. It's definitely true that we are on that precipice moment of, I think, even as a species and as a culture, like birthing this new pattern, and we don't completely see it, but we can feel that it's like gestating. It's starting to come forward, and there's signs and signals, and each of us has our role. So really beautiful articulation of the rose and the importance for the womb in each of us.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Maybe you could share a little bit more about the history of I know a lot of people know that the rose is associated with Mary Magdalene, but there's probably some more layers of that could be useful to understand, and why that symbolism of the rose is so central to the work of being on this path.
Isn't it though? What I like to say to you is that the symbol of the rose, which is also the symbol of the six-petaled flower of life that you see everywhere, and if you've seen my arms flashing around, you'll see it's tattooed on my wrists. This is an encoded geometry, if you want to say it that way. And prior to the crucifix becoming the popular symbol of the Christian religion, and I'm going to make the distinction here between the Christian religion that came into form after Christ and Magdalene were no longer on the planet, by the way. The Christian religion was created by the Roman Catholic Church, not by Christ and Magdalene. What they were prophesizing, what they were moving inside of, could more accurately be described as a mystery school. They were part of the great mystery school traditions that span back into ancient Babylonia and ancient Egypt. And prior to the crucifix becoming the symbol, the rose was the symbol that they used. Rose Christianity is what I would call it. or the rose lineage. And the rose itself is, I want to say this, is the oldest flower that we have on our planet. She is the oldest, the genus of rose, the species of rose is the oldest flower. But if you chart that all the way back to ancient Sumeria and then before into ancient Egypt, you're really looking at the connection between what you would call the rose and the astrology of the Venus cycle, which depicts. And then the Venus cycle, I don't know if anyone knows this, but when the Venus does her full 18-month or 19-month cycle, she makes a rose in the sky. That's the shape that she sacred geometrically makes. And the Venus journey is connected into, surprise, surprise, the descent journey. And the descent journey of Inanna, who is the ancient Babylonian goddess who went from the queen of heaven to the queen of the underworld. And by the way, as she went into the underworld, was then, once she was naked in the underworld and gone through the 7 gateways of descent, the 7 chakras, 7 gateways of descent, was hung on a meat hook for how many days? 3 days. The correlation of that to the Christian mystery of Christ being hung on the cross and then resurrecting after 3 days, there's no mistaking here that we're talking about the same story that is embedded not just in our humanity, but in our connection to the galaxy, to the world that we move in, both above and below. So this symbol of the rose depicts the story of our birth, our life, our death, and our rebirth. It's all encoded into that symbology. And the Magdalene Rose Oracle, of which I just read that card to you, the red rose being the card that we got, the 6 suits that are in that oracle, the 6 journeyways, the 6 archetypes are the creatrix, the incantrix, the initiatrix, the devotrix, the enchantrix, and the illuminatrix. And these 6 faces of the Magdalene, embedded within them is the story of birth through life to death and rebirth. Same story that's encoded. And I believe that this is at the center of the very early Christian mysteries. We're all based upon the ideology, or we could say the cosmology of a second birth. In other words, we would be born again. And we can see that in our world, right? The evangelicals took that term, the born again Christians, but we would be born again, awake into our second sight, into our second birth as a conscious human, or what Mary Magdalene would call somebody who is fully anthropos. And to be a full anthropos was to be a fully awake human being who has done the work of integrating and awakening the divine and the human. And we get a whole lifetime to do that. We get a whole lifetime to awaken. And that's what happens. We come in here, we're born, and we come on our journey of awakening, and we do many, many cycles. And if you look at your life, Stephen, and look at my life, or any of us who are here live together, we've been through many, many iterations. By the time that I'm here now, I have been born and died many times in this life. There's many versions of me, and I am nowhere near the same person I was when I was in my 20s that I am now. But what is the same is the core essence. The divine spark is the same, but how I am embodying that is entirely different, because I have been working with these tools of consciously going through the life, death, and rebirth cycle, the resurrection cycle, consciously for many, many years now, alchemizing and raising my own frequency up to be more in alignment with the divine imprint of who I actually am. And that's available to all of us. That's the big reveal. That's available to all of us. And that is the knowledge that was taken. And this has been ancient knowledge throughout all mystery school lineages. We're awakening this knowing, this gnosis. But this has become the thing that was feared and taken under control, because if we don't have access to this, then we're not sovereign, and we're not creating in our lives from a place of empowered knowing that we have the right to do that. We are operating in that old schism that patriarchal values has told us, which is that we don't have the power. The power is outside of us. And the big movement that's going on in our planet is the remembrance that that's actually not true. That was never true.
Profound. Thank you. Well, we could just keep diving into talking about this. I know you also wanted to guide us in a experiential process too, so people can really activate some of the gnosis directly in themselves. So now would be a great time to do that.
Great, you're right. This subject is my fire, and I love it more than anything because I just think it's changed my life so dramatically, in the life of those people that I've been privileged to walk beside and work with. And so I want that for everyone. I want that for all of you. So with that said, shall we go meet the Magdalene directly, as she is wanting to appear to you in this moment, and what she wants to awaken of your oracular knowing. So let's take a breath together, and I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Take some deep breaths, even let out a little sigh. And I'd like you to feel your central channel. I'd like you to come all the way down, bringing the consciousness of your mind down into your sits bones. And if you need to just rock your hips a little bit to find your seat, to find your sits bones, to find your perineum, your root chakra, and just wiggle a little bit to say hello to that part of your body. And from there, you're going to vision, see, or feel, however you receive information. You're going to drop down a grounding cord, this beautiful cord from the base of your spine, your tailbone, all the way down through your seat, down into the earth beneath you. And you're going to imagine or feel or see that the earth isn't just receiving your root, but she is magnetically pulling your root down into her. This is Mother, Terra Gaia, Terra Sophia. And your root is being magnetically pulled deep, deep down into her, right down toward the molten core, her heart, at the center of this planet that we are part of, that we are cells of her body. And as you breathe out, you're going to relax that root even further down, and you're going to let the root begin to stretch out beneath you, creating these beautiful web working of roots, connecting into these deep waterways and into the substrata caves of Mother Earth, her caves that are filled with beautiful crystals, sapphires and diamonds and gold and silver and platinum, all of these amazing jewels that come from the earth. And you're connecting into the richness of that, the magic of that, the mystery of that darkness and what is hidden in the dark. Everything grows from this darkness. You were grown from this darkness. From your own mother's womb in the darkness, you were grown, just as everything is grown from the womb of this creation. And just as our planet was birthed out of the great inky darkness of the cosmos to become a jewel of emerald and green, blue light hanging in the darkness, we are that magic. We are that mystery. And so I want you to feel the power of the red maven, the creatrix as the Magdalene. Your ability to create all life from within you. Everything that you have created in your own world, every meal you've cooked, every child you have either birthed or helped rear, every idea and project that you have brought into fruition, every part of the home that you have decorated and brought into the world of form. All of this comes from the deep womb of the mother, from within you. That creatrix energy that is your birthright, the Magdalene within you who's saying, I am here to create in the world of form, out of formlessness into form. And so I invite you to feel the fecundity of that. And I'd like you to feel into your life, all that you've created, all that you can feel into and go, wow, that came through my channel into creation. I received the inspiration to bring that into form. We've oftentimes forgotten that this is what it takes. It takes your connection to the deeper rhythm of what you are being called to create in your life. And so with that, I'd like you to feel your spine. And I'd like you to breathe up through the back of your spine, through your sacrum, through into your solar plexus, up into the back of your heart, up into the back of your neck. And I'd like you to bring your consciousness up to your third eye. And if you want to touch your fingertips to right between your brow and up into your crown, the very crown of your head. And I'd like you to feel right now the crown of your head opening. And right above you, floating about 3 inches above your crown, is this gorgeous sapphire blue cobalt light. It's like a sphere of light right above your crown. And this is the Magdalene consciousness as the incantrix now. And she is the high priestess. She is the one who is here to bring forth the gnosis, the higher octave of what you're here to create or become, the higher version of who you are here to embody at this time in your life. And you're going to open your crown, and this beautiful sapphire blue light is going to begin to pour in through your crown. This is the Magdalene as the incantrix, as the high priestess, pouring into you now, awakening through this sapphire blue light all of the light sensitive parts of your brain, your third eye, your pineal gland, your pituitary gland, your amygdala, your medulla oblongata, these sacred centers of your brain being bathed with the sapphire blue light of gnosis, of remembrance of why you came here, of the higher octave of who it is that you're here to be. And you're letting that sapphire blue light of the Magdalene come all the way down, flowing now through your face, through your throat, down through your arms, pooling in your hands. As you begin to fill with this gnosis, this light, all cells of your body now activating to this frequency of the Magdalene, the sapphire blue, the oracle, the divination, the inspiritus, the one who guides us from above, meeting the one who guides us from below. And the incantrix comes now, the sapphire blue to the deep blood red of the creatrix, and they meet in our heart. And they begin to dance, sapphire blue with the deep blood red, creating a DNA spiral, dancing in our heart of the earth, the element of Earth Mother, with the visionary oracle of the priestess saying, I am here to connect you to your higher wisdom, to your higher knowing of what you are here to make manifest through you as the vessel. And so sitting with that, the marriage of these, the above and the below, the dark red and the sapphire blue coming together within you, activating the oracle, the oracular knowing, the gnosis. You're going to meet the Magdalene in your own heart now. She comes as the creatrix, deep red blood, and she comes as the incantrix, the sapphire blue light. And she holds you in the tension point of the above and the below. And she looks you in the eye. And she calls you forward. And she gives you a symbol or an image or a knowing to this query. What is it that I am being called to create in my life at this moment, at this juncture, as I stand where I am right now? What is it that I am called to create that is in alignment with my higher knowing of what is real and true and aligned for me in service to love? And just let yourself receive whatever it is that comes to you. Don't turn away from it. And if it doesn't make sense to you, just receive it anyway. It might be a symbol or an image or a word or a feeling. It might be a whole movie picture. Depends on how your intuition receives information. And just make way to receive it in this moment from her. And bring it inside your heart. And just let yourself sit with it for a moment, because this is the thing. Our gnosis, our intuition, our wisdom sometimes needs to be sat with in its entirety without trying to understand it first. Receive it first. Let it take shape in you first. And then allow it to inform you as to what it means for your life. You are being called by the Magdalene. There is no doubt. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And she speaks and she says, I am here to serve your awakening at this time, to come into a deeper presence of the fullness of who you are, beloved. Will you choose to birth yourself into a more full expression of your truth? And will you bring that to this world that is ailing so deeply for those who are anchored in love and who are willing to walk the path of birth, death, and rebirth in service to the collective evolution? Are you willing to take a small step into that knowing, into that remembrance? For that is why I am coming to you right now. You are not someone that doesn't matter. That is a story that you have been fed, and it is not real, and it is not true. Every being on this planet, in this realm, matters. And that remembrance is at the heart of what must shift in this world. And with that, I thank you for receiving me into your inner sanctum, into your womb space. May whatever it is that you are here to create next be blessed. May it flourish. May it root into fertile soil, and may you be supported in bringing it to fruition, that you may reap the harvest of your own deeper desires. And so it is. So it is. And so shall it be.
Whew.
Whew.
Thank you, Elayne, for being such a potent oracle for Mary Magdalene there and speaking words straight from the divine to bless us in that sanctification.
Thank you for receiving, everybody.
We're going a little bit longer than we'd planned, but it feels really important to everything we've covered. And I also want to ask you, we said we would cover a little bit about the ancient Sibyls and their roles within a society. I think this is important because it connects to each of us claiming that Mary Magdalene energy and being a kind of oracular evolutionary catalyst in our spheres. So I want to invite you to share a little bit about that and how that's showing up in our modern world now.
Absolutely. I'll give you a little taster of this, and I get much more deeply into this in the course offering. But you know, I became really entranced by this word Sibyl and who were the Sibyls. And I got kind of taken down a whole rabbit hole of like who they were. But in essence, who they were these very, very powerful women that were really around from about 4000 BCE. So that's 4000 years before Christ. And the heyday to about 400 or 500 AD. So we're talking about that span of time. And the original Sibyls were known as the Pythonesses or the Dragonesses, and they were actually found in North Africa. And the history of the Sibyls, of these great oracular beings, was rooted actually in African tradition. And like so much of our world was kind of taken from those traditions and then colonized into our white Western world. So I really want to give homage to that, that these very powerful oracles that people would travel to come to receive their wisdom, to come to receive their insight, their healing, their activation, their catalyzing. So not just the leaders of the country, but everybody would go to consult the oracle. It was well understood, it was well known that that was one way that we would access into a deeper sense of knowing. But not just the Sibyls who were the ones who were the famous ones were there, but there would have been those women and men in every community who were considered the Sibyls of their community, right? They would have been the ones who were giving oracle, reading the cards, reading the tea leaves. I mean, I remember my grandmother reading the tea leaves. That was what she would do. And when I was a kid, we'd drink the tea, turn it upside down, swizzle it, take it off. And then she would say, what do you see? What do you get? Who's there? Is it a dragon? Is it, what is it that's appearing to you as information from another realm? And so we have this history of these very famous Sibyls. And there was, at the heyday of them, there was the Oracle of Delphi. Of course, we've all heard of her, right? The Pythia, the one who built they built the Temple of Apollo to house her. And you can still go to the ruins of the Temple of Apollo. And above her doorway, there is an inscription in Latin, and it says, know thyself. Know thyself. And we couldn't get much clearer than that, right? As an indicative or directive from the ancient mystery schools to us right now as to why is it important for us to remember this Sibylline tradition that has been part of our ancient mystery tradition throughout time, and I'm sure has a much longer history than the one that I can chart from 4000 BCE. I'm sure it's been divination and connecting into the gods and the skies and receiving messages has been part of our humanity since we arrived here. We've been doing this, and it's only in the last 2000 years that it was made heretical, and that medicine women were burned at the stake, shamans and medicine women and medicine men and priests and, priestesses rather, or druid priests, or anybody who was outside the Roman Catholic tradition was deemed to be heretical. And so when we're reclaiming this, we're standing on the shoulders of a very rich tradition of psychic, intuitive information that you could say in the 20th century, Jung was the main predominant of bringing that back into the cultural zeitgeist. He was the one who coined the term archetype. He was a deep Christian mystic and was bringing back into our collective psyche this idea that we had access to this collective unconscious that, by the way, is where everything comes from. And we're all connected into it. It isn't one person that's connected, we all are. So this is why I get so passionate, Stephen, about us knowing her story of that we have. This isn't just something that's a new age movement. This is an old age movement. This is a reclamation of, you know what I mean? I'm feeling old age, right, myself. But, it's a reclamation of ancient wisdom into present moment that is for the times that we are living in. These are sacred technologies we need to rebalance our human psyche to a place of health and wellness. So.
Wow. Elayne, you've brought so many threads together in this time already, and it's really clear that this reclamation of their oracular function through the vehicle of working with Mary Magdalene and all the parts of ourselves that she represents, that it's really central for the evolutionary shift of our time, is that we need this reclamation. We need more and more people like those who have gathered here to reclaim that direct gnosis and be oracles for their sphere and their community, and the people who need to have that higher octave of knowing that can move us forward into a new pattern. Well, let's talk about your upcoming course directly, since I know it's an amazing opportunity to do it. I know each time you've taught a program, you're building on another body of work and transmission and activation. And so each one, I think, is more potent than the last. So the course that Elayne's going to be teaching is called The Magdalene Rose: Invoke Your Inner Oracle and Embody the Divine Through the Six Faces of Mary Magdalene. Find it at the URL magdaleneoracles.com, magdaleneoracles.com. And it's plural partially because you are all the oracles. It's not a singular. It's a democratization of the oracular function that Elayne is really helping to catalyze. So Elayne, I'd love for you to share your intentions for this program, and then we'll go through the modules about what you're covering.
Absolutely. Well, I love that you brought that in, that it's a plural oracles, because that's really the truth. So my primary intention behind this offering has been really clear. The Incantrix, the high priestess, came to me and literally said, it is time to awaken and reclaim our oracular knowing. We have to do this for the times that we're sailing through. We need to do this. We need to remember and reinstate our connection to the divine and our ability to be able to access into that intuition, that psychic ability, that inner wisdom. So my intention is that everybody who comes on this course will in fact be doing that through the 6 faces of the Magdalene. And I said to you earlier on in this call that each one of the faces holds a function of remembrance of what it is to be the oracle. We need to activate all of them to get the full picture. And that's what we're going to be doing together. We'll be traveling through the 6 faces, reclaiming their gifts at each portal so that we can become more fully embodied and trust our inner gnosis, because that's really where we've been really deeply mired in an old stories. We've been taught to mistrust ourselves, to constantly look outside of ourselves for the expert guidance out there, rather than asking self first, higher self, what's true here? So that's my intention.
Beautiful. Module 1, embody the oracles of Mary Magdalene and delve deeply into spiritual awakening to reclaim the power of your gnosis, spiritual maturation, and feminine magic.
Yeah, well, that's all going to be a take more deeply on what we've been talking about today. So if you've loved today, I'm going to go deeper into the stuff that I couldn't get to because I've been going so fast, trying to get over the surface of all these threads, but we'll be getting more deeply into the ancient history of the Sibyls, who they were, all these different oracular traditions, including the ancient Pythonesses, who were also known as the Black Doves. And those are the very first Sibyls from North Africa. And I really want to give them some space because it's fascinating lineage.
Module 2, become initiated into a new cycle of creation and birth by Magdalene as the creatrix, the red maven, to feel inspired, connected, and loved.
She's the one that we got today. She's the root, and the red rose is part of her suit. We're going to be traveling through each one of those within the deck of cards. There's 6 different parts to each one of the archetypes, and we're going to be traveling through that each class. I'm going to be tuning you into her sacred tools, her sacred frequency, the power that she's having you reclaim. So the red maven is having you reclaim the power of your blood power, your connection to your ancestry, the connection to those who came before you, so that you can stand on solid ground in actually being who you are on the planet at this time. And so there's a lot of reclamation work that's going to happen inside of each one. Specifically the creatrix at the root, we need that foundation. We can't go anywhere unless we have her foundation.
Module 3, reclaim the power of the incantrix, the high priestess, to reconnect with your imagination, intuition, and gnosis, deepening your connection to your inner wisdom.
But again, we met her today too. They both showed up. The Encantrix came in. So we'll be continuing to deepen with her in the sapphire blue frequency, in the sacred tool of the chalice, in the sacred power of gnosis power. We'll be continuing to dive into what she wants us to reclaim of our ability to have inner sight and to actually live within that. So we'll be meeting her as she lives within us, but with all these archetypes, we're then going to be taking them into practice in our world. So there's going to be a both inner piece of this, but also how you bring her out into your everyday world.
Module 4, awaken your sovereign queen with the initiatrix to access deeper truth, discernment, and your oracular nature.
There you go. So in order to trust our inner knowing, we have to have discernment. We must have the tool of the sword. We must have activated our sovereign power. We must have returned to a place inside of self where we're residing on our own sovereign throne. We must be able to know what that feels like. And the sovereign queen or the initiatrix is the one who brings us those teachings.
Module 5, activate heart-centered awareness with the Devotrix, Rosa Mystica, to cultivate deep compassion and spiritual love.
Yeah, well, so we must come into how the heart knows what it knows, right? Because there's inner sight, there's inner vision, there's inner hearing, there's inner feeling, but there's also an inner knowing that comes from being connected to the heart. And the Devotrix, or the Rosa Mystica, is the one who brings us into the heart power, into the awakening of the flaming heart. There's a reason why so many of the images of Yeshua and Magdalene show a flaming heart, right? That's part of the Christian iconography, and we're going to learn about what that actually means.
Module 6, transmute challenges into growth with the Enchantrix, the ecstatic alchemist, to embrace joy, transformation, and alchemical magic.
Well, there you go. Who doesn't want to embrace their alchemical magic? This is really the realm of magic through the body, not through being out of our bodies, but through creating magic through our presence, through who we're being in our lives, and through actually learning about how to create ritual and magic in our own lives.
Hmm. And
Mm.
finally, module 7, navigate life, death, and rebirth with the Illuminatrix, the Death Maiden, to embrace the wisdom of cycles and the power of renewal.
So this is that end. We started with the creatrix and we end with the illuminatrix, and we begin again at the creatrix. She is the death maiden. She is the one who says to us, we must also be willing to die to that which is complete within ourselves and within our world. Some would say that this is what we're struggling with most deeply at this time, collectively, is to let go of what has been to allow something new to come into form. And the illuminatrix is the one who initiates us to go into the oracle of the unknown.
What a powerful program. I know this is going to just activate and open so much for those who choose to join. Again, it's all at magdaleneoracles.com, and you're going to get not only the 7 live sessions with Elayne, which really go beyond teaching. They're more of a experiential transmission of a way of being. It's working in the archetypal field that works on a deeper level than just mental. You'll also get interactive exercises, time to ask questions. You'll have recordings of both video and audio, so you can go back and reactivate those same transmissions, word-for-word transcripts, weekly exercises for home. And there's also a Facebook community to support you and really create a deep sense of sacred community across the world. There'll also be small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page, there's an abundance of bonuses, which is part of the outflowing of generosity that is the Magdalene. So there's a living oracle, audio transmissions of the Magdalene Rose Oracle deck. Elayne demonstrated that deck a bit. It's a beautiful transmission of wisdom. I want to share anything more about that deck and the audio transmission.
Yeah, I'm really excited to share this with you. So I did an audiobook version of the cards that you're going to be receiving, where I speak the transmissions live, all of the transmissions through all the suits, to composed music by my beloved, who is a musician and composer, where he composed specifically pieces of music to hold archetypal frequency for each one of the archetypes.
Mm.
So you're receiving a transmission on both levels, and they're really, really powerful.
Mm. Fantastic. In addition, also with the same Oracle deck, we'll be getting a discount on that Oracle deck, which will help save you some money as you invest in that as something that can be a sacred tool for you for years to come. It's also a video session bonus with Elayne from our Many Faces of Mary Magdalene Summit that she hosted, and it's called The Way of the Magdalene Rose, the marriage of our humanity and divinity. And there's one final bonus you get if you sign up by midnight tonight. And this gives us a little extra encouragement to go and tune in on the page at magdaleneoracles.com and just get a sense for, is this the right next step for you? And if you're getting a yes, you'll get an excerpt from the Magdalene Rose Oracle book, which is a PDF and audio transmissions from Elayne with her beloved partner, Bam. So you want to share more about that special bonus folks get if they sign up today?
So what you'll get also in addition is I've made a beautiful PDF of the booklet that goes with the cards. And so you'll have that for you to keep, and it'll come also with those transmissions that Stephen mentioned. So you'll get the whole package basically as a fast action bonus. And what I want to say about that is what it means is that you will have imagery of all the cards, and you'll have the PDF of the book of the cards. So you'll have everything you need, even if you didn't decide to go ahead and buy the actual Oracle deck. And I wanted to make sure that that was available to you all as a fast action bonus.
What a beautiful offering. Couldn't be more timely. And I know that builds upon decades of your own work and exploration. So people get the distilled, most potentized dimensions of the Magdalene transmission wisdom by working with this in this way. So we've kept the investment very accessible. It's 3 payments of $128, or you save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to start September 26th and run Thursdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. But even if you can't make those live times, you can watch the recordings, get the transmission, activate the practices, and still get the full benefits. And I also encourage you to go through the page at magdaleneoracles.com and read through some of the testimonials. People just love courses that are really initiations with Elayne, because there's a field that gets created that's powerful, that catalyzes real changes and transformation rather than just head knowledge. And so she really knows how to take people on a journey of transformation and blossoming and opening. So you're in really beautiful hands, and you will, I think, blossom in magical new ways if you choose to go forward. So again, it's all at magdaleneoracles.com.
Thank you, Stephen. I just want to take a bow to you and the Shift Network for your constant and unerring support of the Magdalene and of the work that I've been doing, but also just of bringing back this important space and offering this space to her, and that we can all continue to deepen with her. I really want to bow to that, because that's been an important part. You've played a very important part in making, manifesting, creating this. If we're talking about the creatrix energy, you have been part of creating this space for her to come back into the mainstream.
Well, it's an honor to do so. And thank you for the wisdom that you share and the depth of your own alchemy that is required to bring forward these teachings. I know you go through some very intense initiations as part of being able to incarnate and embody this work. So thank you for that. And thank you all for joining. And if you would like to go further into the heart of the Magdalene, you are welcome to do so. I guess I should say the womb of the Magdalene.
Yes.
You can do so at magdaleneoracles.com, and you'll get that special bonus if you sign up today, the excerpt from the Magdalene Rose Oracle book, PDF and audio transmissions. So thank you, Elayne. Thank you all for joining us. Many blessings.
Many blessings.